Also, things keep getting worse for the Cuomo brothers. The New York Attorney General's office has released newly released video from then Governor Cuomo, denying allegations that he sexually harassed his staff. Take a listen, just part of the 11-hour deposition.
It could happen that somebody kisses on the lips. You know, some people peck on the lips. Never a romantic kiss, but some people peck on the lips, even at public events, by the way. People I don't know. But as a general rule, I kiss on the cheek. It's relevant because this is a biased political investigation, as we know, and that's what it is. That's why it's relevant.
I think no more questions from us. Governor, thank you for your time.
I would like to say it was a pleasure, Mr. Kim, but I'm on the road.
I guess it was a joke to then Governor Cuomo. Meanwhile, CNN's Chris Cuomo is being accused of using his media sources to dig in and find out more information about his brother's accuser. But he remains on the air pretending like he's done nothing wrong. He's talking about the Omicron variant, again, pretending like his brother didn't mishandle that situation in New York as well. And joining us to discuss this is New York State Attorney General candidate Michael Henry. Michael, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, John.
You know, again, this is a sensational situation based on the allegations here involved, but also, I mean, this is the type of stuff, you're the expert, you're the lawyer here, but it kind of gets to this level of illegality when it comes to Governor Cuomo and his coordination with his brother and what advantages, you know, Chris Cuomo was getting from his brother. The whole thing, it just reeks to everyone.
Right. Firstly, watching that clip of Andrew Cuomo, he clearly went to the Bill Clinton School of Wordplay. I mean, that was embarrassing. But look, Chris Cuomo is not a journalist. He just plays one on TV. And at the very least, this is journalistic malpractice, because to use your resources to conduct opposition research on potential victims of sexual harassment, and then also to snoop around to try and uncover when the Ronan Farrow story was going to drop in the New Yorker. This is a perfect example of why the general public has lost faith in the media in this country.
Yeah, and you know, the whole thing is grotesque because of the fact that Chris Cuomo chose to interview his brother in the height of the pandemic. They went on and made the joke with the big cotton swab and all that other stuff. And so it works both ways. If you're going to include your brother in your coverage, then you have to cover your brother in a fair way. And we see that did not happen here with Chris Cuomo. I mean, let's look at some of these text messages. Dozens of them show Chris Cuomo and Melissa DeRosa, who was Andrew Cuomo's top aide, discussing how to respond to the mounting allegations. As part of the exchange back in March, the pair wrote to each other, DeRosa saying, quote, "Rumor going around from Politico, 1 to 2 more people coming out tomorrow. Can you check your sources?" Chris Cuomo writes back, "On it." Then Chris Cuomo responded. So that was Melissa DeRosa asking Chris Cuomo to dig into his sources, and he agreed to do it. You know, he talked about this before, you know, gave this whole apology to his audience. It doesn't make it any better. And, you know, he's still out there. The question is, will anyone be held accountable other than Andrew Cuomo?
Look, I think that CNN needs to get after it and, you know, just fire Chris Cuomo and make him unemployable like his brother, because he clearly provided cover for his brother during the height of the pandemic. And what he did was he built his brother into a hero when the reality was his brother was a zero. And his brother allowed for people to die in nursing homes, covered up those deaths, and then utilized public resources to enrich himself on an over $5 million book deal. And Chris Cuomo doesn't want to talk about this scandal because we all know why. We just read what you put up on the screen, and we all know exactly why he's keeping his mouth shut, and CNN needs to get on it and fire him.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should all have someone who looks at us the way Brian Stelter looks at Chris Cuomo. He's doing what Brian Stelter does, defending his colleague there. This is what he tweeted out. For what it's worth, when Chris Cuomo addressed his actions on the air back in August, he says, "This will be my final word on it," and he hasn't addressed the matter since. So, I mean, I guess, you know, if Chris Cuomo says he's done talking about it, we should just respect his wishes, huh?
Well, Brian Stelter's being Brian Stelter, and for what it's worth, Chris Cuomo should have never had anything to say about his brother because it was unethical. And additionally, I would like to say to Brian Stelter, for what it's worth, 50,000 people lost their lives in nursing homes because of failed policies by Andrew Cuomo, which his brother helped cover up. And those families still do not have justice. For what it's worth, Brian Stelter.
Yeah, I'm looking at these pictures of Chris Cuomo at the stock market, looking very serious. Anyway,
Right.
the thing that's amazing, and I don't know if these are real reports or not, but there are actually some reports out there that Andrew Cuomo's team is trying to float his name as, a potential attorney general candidate. He's had this job before, wants it back. I mean, I think that speaks to the fact that he doesn't take these allegations against him very seriously, nor is he even contemplating how much the nursing home issue still haunts him.
Right. And it also shows that he doesn't have any remorse for his failed policies. The impeachment report showed that he was completely unfit to hold office. And the fact of the matter is he's regularly floating his name out there for the attorney general's race as my opponent, which people could get more information at michaelhenry4ag.com. There also is another element of this, though. He does have an $18 million war chest. And there's a side of me that's curious if he's using this money, this potential run, to make it look like he's utilizing these resources for political purposes in contrast to his own legal defense.
The way New York is, it's basically a one-party rule state. Do you feel like you have any shot there?
Yeah, because I think what we've seen this past 2021 election, that we've started to gain traction in areas that Republicans typically didn't win in. And I think it's the one-party control of the state, along with the government's disastrous response to the COVID crisis, that has allowed for people to open their eyes. And I think we do have a pathway in 2022, which we didn't have in previous cycles.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the record of a lack of success when it comes to the pandemic. That is still an issue in a lot of folks' minds here. I want to talk about that with you and Governor Kathy Hochul's response now. She's issued this state of emergency, blaming that on the Omicron variant. She's also halted elective surgeries there in hospitals, and Mayor Bill de Blasio is encouraging New York City residents to mask up again in all indoor public spaces. What would you be doing differently, or what would you advocate for that's different from Kathy Hochul and Bill de Blasio?
I think this is a totally knee-jerk reaction on her behalf. It's troubling that she's addressing a new variant like this that she has minimal information on. It's also troubling that she's looking to stop elective procedures, which could potentially prevent people from getting important health screenings for their own personal conditions. And what we've seen from Kathy Hochul is she hasn't learned anything from the past. We're in a situation right now in New York where people are actually losing businesses because of what they're doing, locking down these communities. And, I'm clear. I'm pro-vaccine and I'm anti-mandate, and that's my position as a candidate.
You do have to, of course, reach the entire state of New York, and not everyone feels that way. And that goes back to my previous question about how how do you kind of bridge that gap and represent the entire state of New York? I mean, do you think that's a winning message that's going to actually deliver a victory for not just you, but for other Republicans in the state?
Right. I think everybody should have the option and to do what they want to do with their own medical advice from their doctors. And I think this crosses party lines. I think that whether people that are conservatives and people that are liberals, they all share the same feeling that they want to listen to their doctors, not government officials. So I'm on the freedom side of this, and that's my position. And I think it's a winning position statewide in this state.
Now, aside from the pandemic, what are some other differences that New Yorkers might recognize if you were the Attorney General, say, what's different from you and Letitia James?
Well, number one, I'm not going to weaponize the office against political opponents. I'm not going to engage in politically driven lawsuits that I know have no merit, wasting the taxpayers' dollars and targeting political enemies. Secondly, I would not be engaging in a war on police. I would be supporting the repeal of bail reform. I would be against non-citizens voting, which is something I plan to file a lawsuit against if the New York City Council moves forward with this bill to allow non-citizens to vote. I would also seek to get justice for the families of COVID victims, and I would take corruption a lot more serious than she has under her leadership.
Yeah, I want to ask you real quickly about what you just said there. I think I was reading something earlier today that this is actually moving forward in the state of New York now. They're going to let non-citizens vote in local elections. Just a couple of years ago, if you mentioned this, folks would say you're crazy. This would never happen. But here we are. And it's not just here. We see it in other places as well. This is just the first step in what I think a lot of Democrats want. And they want illegal immigrants to be able to vote in national elections as well.
Right. And this is the problem. It's a New York City bill, which I believe violates Article 2, Section 1 of the New York State Constitution, which defines the qualifications as voters and specifically uses the term citizen. It's a dangerous bill because it's for people with temporary status. But what it does is it allows someone to move here, 45 days before an election, vote, and then leave. And the people who are permanent citizens here have to deal with the repercussions of that. Secondly, Democrats only get emboldened when they get these type of victories. So they're going to push it on a state level, and they're going to push it for illegal aliens. And your point is well taken. This is the next step with them. And if we do not fight this now, because it is unconstitutional, we're going to be on the losing side of this. And that's why I'm stepping up on this. And that's why I'm fighting this, because it is completely outrageous to allow for non-citizens to have voting rights, because what it does is it devalues the legitimacy of citizenship. And for many people, the greatest accomplishment in their life, a legal immigrant, was to raise their hand after all their hard work and get sworn in as a United States citizen. And you're also taking the joy out of their accomplishment from them with this kind of legislation.
Real quickly, Michael, too, I wanted to ask you about something else that just came across today, and that's New York City passing these supervised injection sites. So these are going to be safe sites for heroin users to go. They're basically decriminalizing the use of heroin in New York City.
Yeah, I'm not pro heroin. I think that is a ridiculous idea. And it's just really shows how far left New York City has gone. And I think that we've seen in this last election cycle, people are fed up, and we need to have a restoration in New York as to what's right and wrong. And I think the appetite is there for it in 2022.
Yeah, Mayor Bill de Blasio calls these overdose prevention sites. They're highly controversial. We'll see what comes of it. Michael, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me, John. I appreciate your time.